Guess we'll give it a few seconds, but thanks for everyone who's already shown up. A reminder to everyone, if you could mute before we get started. Okay. Well, I guess we'll get started. Thanks for everyone who showed up. Thanks for coming to the DEI, WBC DEI committee's, event here. My name's Shaheen. I'm one of the vice chairs, along with Billy and Josh, our chair. And we put this along with David Osei. We were able to meet Roberto here, and we have something really exciting and really cool. So a lot of times in DEI, we're always thinking about, a minority or a gender or other groups of marginalized people. But one group that often gets forgotten is the youth. A lot of times, ageism is also a factor when it comes to inclusion, be it too old or too young. But a lot of times, the people of tomorrow, today's kids get forgotten, marginalized, and we've all seen a lot of adversity in the last 4, 5 years with all that's happened in our society and whatnot. And we all know what it's like to have to overcome big obstacles, big hurdles. And there's a lot of people out there who struggle with a lot, and they just need a little bit of a little helping hand. Uh, it's that old phrase of how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. But it all starts with that first bite. It all starts with making that first decision to make a hard choice to change, because change is very difficult. And luckily, we have people, we have organizations with Roberto's help that help guide people, help them make that first step. And once you start making that first step, it's just a snowball just flowing into a better life, better choices. Um, right now, this organization that Roberto is working with, the Cornerstone Craftsman, it's a great organization. Started, I believe, about 2021. So they're in their fourth year now, going into their fourth year, and it, it just it's a great way of bringing kids out of a dangerous pathway, giving them options, giving them that first choice that we all talk about. And I'm just really excited you guys get to meet Roberto, meet his organization here, and all that they're doing for the kids, which is really tomorrow, our society. So I'll let the man speak for himself. It's really impressive. So yeah, go ahead, take it away, Roberto.
Was I muted? Oh man. Anyway, I'm Roberto Gomez. Thank you everybody for being here. And I love the analogy about how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. I also love the analogy, if you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime as opposed to just giving him the fish, right? That's me paraphrasing and whatnot. But so we started this work about 3 years ago in 2021, and the reason I started this work is because I just wanted to give back. And the work that we do is we recruit and teach and mentor, provide life skills and compensation as they're learning for 12 to 17-year-old Black and Latino low income marginalized community members in Alexandria City. And 3 years ago, I was just a business owner who had a very similar background to these kids. And I knew that if somebody had come and spoken to me at the age they were at to intervene and offer me an alternative opportunity as opposed to what my living situation looked like, especially somebody that I saw representation in, somebody like myself, would I have listened? And with that mentality, I told myself, perhaps there's a way I can time travel without building a time machine. And the way I did that was deciding to engage with my community and recruit these young individuals and tell them that I wanted to help them. Initially, wasn't really sure what the help was going to look like. I just knew that I wanted to teach them trades because the trade saved my life. They allowed me to be a business owner. They allowed me to pay my bills and live pretty comfortably. So I started this 3 years ago with about 5 kids that I had recruited by sponsoring events in my city. And it's funny how I got there actually, because one day I was laying in bed before I started this initiative, and I literally just sat up, like a force that compelled me to sit up and just do something about it. So I started cold calling juvenile detention centers, probation office, court services, parks and rec in my city, whatever numbers I could find where I could locate the kids that need the most help, the at-risk kids, the kids that are court involved, kids that don't have food at home, don't have clean clothes, kids that are contributing to, negatively impacting our communities, not because they are maliciously prowling the streets, but because they don't have their basic needs met. So fast forward to these five kids that I mentioned a few minutes ago, and I recruited them and I told them that I was going to teach them the trades, and didn't really have anywhere to take them. So I started calling friends and family. I had this crazy idea. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Field of Dreams. Pretty old movie, but there's a saying in that movie: "If you build it, they will come." And I just knew that I would build this idea, and make it work for these kids. So I started cold calling. I mean, I'm sorry, I started calling family and friends and saying, I got these five kids I want to teach the trades to. I need somewhere to take them. I'm going to start them with very basic things like plaster, plaster repair to drywall and painting. Do you have any room in your house that needs to be painted? And I'll take them in here and we'll paint it. If you buy the paint, we'll cover the labor. And if the kids don't get it right, I'll come in with my employees after and fix it for you at the cost of materials. So we did that for about 6 months. And the kids are very excited to be learning, all while me compensating them for their time because I wanted them to develop a mentality of coming to work and being able to learn a skill that translates into a viable career path to earn your way out of your current living circumstances. That when they become of age, they don't have to live in that cycle of poverty and trauma, and having no one to protect them. They can be their own protectors, right? And essentially stop that cycle. So we did that for about 6 months, and amazingly, these kids went back to their communities and started telling their friends, and their friends started telling their friends, and we started getting calls from a lot of single moms and asking us to help their kids. And I was self-funding it the whole time, and I really couldn't afford to take on any more kids. It's costing me so much money. I mean, I was feeding these kids breakfast, paying them to come and learn. These kids are food insecure. Oftentimes, they don't eat unless they go to school lunch and breakfast. So, it got pretty expensive and I got frustrated because I didn't know what I was going to do. So I signed up to speak at city council in my city and, plead to the council members for some kind of help, any kind of help, because I had kids on a wait list at this point that I couldn't let in. And I would find out that this kid got arrested for using fentanyl, or this kid got arrested because he was skipping school, or this kid got arrested because he was breaking into cars. These were kids that were on my wait list that I felt obligated to help. So I spoke at city council, and everybody was very receptive of what I was doing in the community. In fact, they had no idea that something like this was even going on, and they wanted to help. But I kept running into the same challenge that, it's too bad you're not a nonprofit. At that time, if I'm being honest, I had no idea what a nonprofit did. I had no idea how it was structured, any of that. That's not my area of expertise. But I knew that I kept hearing that word, and I knew that I would figure out what it was if that meant I could help more kids. So I continued down that path. About a month after I spoke, the city found a way to allocate funding to a fiscal sponsor of an existing nonprofit that could funnel the funds to us for us to use to bring in more kids. And from 5 kids, we went to 10 kids. But as you can imagine, it gets pretty expensive pretty fast. So, we had to stop seeing the kids as much as we could. But, as we started developing these trusted relationships with the kids and their families, we started having moms call us and say, hey, can you show up to my kid's court date? He might be going to jail today. And engaging with probation officers. So it went from like us trying to teach them skills to surrounding them on all sides to fully support these young individuals who have been, misled and made mistakes because mom might be on drugs in the house or dad might be in and out of jail. And all the systems around them have failed them and they trauma bond on the street with other youth that are going through the same things and misguide each other. So it morphed into more than just trying to train them in a skilled trade. It morphed into getting involved with their lives and understanding them for their traumatic experiences. And I grew up in a very similar way as that, so it afforded me the opportunity to connect with them in a way that probably no one else has, at least not a positive male role model who they see as successful. Um, And we started showing up for them at their court dates. We started getting involved with their probation. The probation officers started agreeing to let them do their community service through us, which meant that the burden of community service, if not completed as a court obligation, which would otherwise translate to them being incarcerated again, if not finished, we can now alleviate, and all while teaching them a skill. So we kept going with that. And we decided, we were going to pursue every opportunity to engage these kids civically and do as much good through what we were doing as possible, um, separate from just them learning the trades, which is in itself. So we started sponsoring events in our city in partnership with like the police department. And some of these events were cookouts, community cookouts in low income areas where these kids were actually living. And we had our kids wrapping up pre-cooked food, hot dogs, hamburgers, in community-wide cookouts next to the police department, attempting to bridge that gap not only for the kids in their community but for the police department, so they can stop preying on these communities and understand that you don't have to police them in the traditional ways of policing. In fact, that way is not working at all, which is why there's such a disconnect in regards to the services that come into these communities. So we kept on, we kept on, kept on. I just knew that I was going to keep going. I was going to make this work somehow, some way. And the police department took great interest in what we were doing and said, how can we help? And I said, well, we're running out of spaces to take these kids to teach them the trades. If you have any space, I have this vision. And what that vision was is we built two 8x8 bare framed rooms with essentially the studs of a room before you hang up the drywall and all that fun stuff, using 2x4s and joists going across the ceilings, all what a room would actually look like. And we ran mock utilities, we ran mock Romex to receptacles and switches, all in compliance with what NEC code would state if an inspector came in. Obviously, nothing live. There was no live electricity for liability reasons, but we also ran plumbing lines and all of these things because the vision that I had was we'll build this safe space where these kids can come and have a sense of community and learn these skills all while we're mentoring them in a very trauma-informed way. I know that word's very popular, but we know what it means here. And teaching them these skills. And we brought in a PlayStation 5 and TV where somewhere they want to hang out. And we were teaching these kids how to literally build the rooms in the finishing stages from the ground up, starting with drywall, plaster, having them operate Festool pole sanders, $3,000 machines, $1,400 machines, all while engaging them in a way where they're not used to being engaged in. And we saw their skills develop. We incorporated curriculums that start off at how to properly move furniture and install protective coverings all the way up to electrical theory, all to get them interested in the trades. And what happened is, as a result of it, we started getting approached by some very interesting organizations, including big name property redevelopers in charge of billion-dollar projects here in our city, who want to help provide job opportunities to the to the contractors bidding on their contracts by pulling from the local pool of labor, to ensure that as these individuals are being displaced from their communities, as they're being gentrified, they can have an opportunity to live in their city that doesn't require them to be on government assistance, because they'll be able to be the high earners of tomorrow in the trades without having to go to college, because we know these kids are not going to college. So we kept on doing that, and more calls kept coming in, more calls kept coming in, and I hadn't formalized a nonprofit yet. I was still researching that diligently, all while running my company and running this amazing program, and working with amazing agencies and organizations in our city. And slowly we started forming our nonprofit, right? We started structuring it right. We brought in our board of directors, we brought in our bylaws, we brought in every kind of paperwork you can possibly think of, and also the attorneys to oversee them, and accountants, and this and that. And what's amazing is that it was all self-funded up until recently. Like, all the profits from my company were going directly into this program and the kids, providing them, loaning their parents money to pay phone bills and light bills, and help the kids, parents pay for groceries, or giving the kids groceries directly because some of their parents are on drugs and selling their food stamps for cash to buy drugs, and the kids are left starving in their own homes. So we started to be able to identify all these issues and understand why their basic needs aren't being met, all while providing these great opportunities for them. And we saw some pretty cool things happen as a result of that we didn't anticipate. And one of the things I like to talk about the most is that we started protecting these children and providing for these children, and moms and sometimes dads, and in some cases moms and dads, were very interested in the levels of support we were providing to their kids and interested in learning how they can help us to get more attention to what we were doing. And we had several opportunities to talk about the importance of voting and ensuring that our elected officials have the same agendas as we do in regards to providing opportunities for our communities, our low income Black and Latino communities. And what that resulted in is us actually affecting our local election here in Alexandria City, the Democratic primary, by registering high numbers of low income, first time Black and Latino voters who don't traditionally come out to participate. And their kids as well being engaged civically, like seeing signs in the city where it says, say no to vote for a zone, say no to zoning and affordable housing for all and things like that, where they're interested in what's going on in their communities to the point where they're asking to go to city council meetings, all while learning these skills, right? And our theory on this, especially in the construction industry in Alexandria, because we know that, as these big projects go on for decades, and they will, it's difficult for contractors to find skilled labor. In fact, I think now more than ever, everybody on this call who's involved in the construction industry knows how hard it is to find good help. So what we're setting out to do is to develop real workforce mentorship related programs that translate into skilled laborers, because we work with kids as young as 12 all the way up to they're 18. They don't age out of our program until they're 18, which means that these kids will be with us for 6 years, learning all types of things like cost estimation, how to properly measure a room, right? Levels of geometry, tricks of the trade that other people take, it takes them a long time to learn, which means that they'll be entering the workforce more skilled than a 4 to 5 year, person, apprentice in that field. And the way I see this working, at least for our community, and we're actually replicating this in Portsmouth. They have a huge gun violence problem amongst youth right now. We're loaning them our data because we've created digital content in it by using AI technology to reinforce our hands-on curriculum, in a digital way, so the kids can study our curriculum at home and engage in a different way with testing and data collection and strategic projections and all this fun stuff that would take me a long time to describe on this short call. Um, we're trying to help out our community in multiple ways here. We're trying to ensure that the local economy is strengthened by hiring local and keeping it local. We're trying to ensure that these individuals who would otherwise be portable and threats to our community, to the safety of our community, have their basic needs met, ensuring that they don't have to be roaming the streets committing crime or self-medicating by using fentanyl or doing other type of illicit substances to try to deal with the pain and trauma of not being able to afford laundry detergent, to have clean clothes to go to school, by the way, which is a true story. Some of our kids, in large part, were not going to school last year, and we found out why. There were things, basic things like I didn't have laundry detergent to wash my clothes, and I didn't want to go to school to be embarrassed because I would have gotten to a fight, right? So we're trying to take all of these things, all these negative things we're in the community, and transition them into positive things, including even for the taxpayer dollar. I mean, we talk about how much it is to house an individual who's incarcerated in contrast to the return on investment by them contributing to, the local economy as well as the GDP. I mean, we're talking, limitless new skilled workers in a market where the demand is only going up every day, especially with AI getting ready to take over a lot of people's jobs, which I don't think is talked about enough. But that being said, we continue our efforts and we continue to see new developments and we continue to track it in a responsible way and scale in a responsible way, all while strategically connecting data, including keeping track of individuals for 5 to 10 years when they're done with us, so we can see what kind of impact we really had on their lives. One of our success stories that I like to mention the most is the kid I'm most proud of. I won't mention him by name, but he was complicit in a murder that took place after school in a shopping center called Bradley Shopping Center here in Alexandria about 2 years ago. And when I say complicit, I mean that's what the court says he was, but he was actually engaged in a separate fight from the fight that took place where the young man was murdered, but only away, probably about 10 feet away from where that fight was. Two groups of kids fighting each other. And the young man, luckily, wasn't incarcerated for a long period of time, but he was incarcerated. He was charged with malicious wounding, mob assault, sentenced to indefinite probation, and the kid was likely going to end up an adult felon. He was with us for 2 years. He learned the skills he needed to learn. We provided the supports we needed to provide. We got him off probation, the indefinite probation. He got a full-time job and he graduated high school last year. Like that's the impact we're making on the kids. And my mission is to continue that and help in all communities. And because I love the trades and I'm biased towards the trades, I'll continue to develop these programs geared towards the trades. But ultimately, I think what we need to be doing is identifying where the job market's going in that locality and providing work-based, workforce development trades programs with a real mentorship approach to contribute to individuals being able to afford to live in their localities, without going to college and earning, a livable wage. And I think that we should all be entitled to that, or at least the opportunity to have it. And that's who I am. That's what I do. That's what I'll continue to do. And I appreciate being on this call. And I guess at this time, I'd love to open the floor for any questions or comments, and maybe engage in some discussion about thoughts and feelings on what was just heard here today.
Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Yes, Andre. Okay, that's the introduction. Now we're going to go through the slides. I apologize about that. So I get really passionate about speaking about this stuff, and we actually have a presentation for you. So the name of the program is called Cornerstone Craftsman. And as you can see here on the first slide, we have a vision, which is to cycle of generational trauma and build a skilled workforce in the skilled trades, which is mentioned here today. And the mission is to provide at-risk youth with instructions, tools, and mentoring required to earn a livable wage and a viable career path in the skilled trades, as we've discussed. And the values of our program is community and advocacy, empathy and understanding, honesty and integrity, selflessness and self-awareness, quality and craftsmanship, which we all know is very, very important. And we can go to the next slide, Andre. And this is our board of directors here. Can't say enough about these individuals, all great people who care about the cause. Our board chair is Michael Johnson. He's a community outreach coordinator. He's been in Alexandria for 5 generations. His family's been here for 5 generations, which means his family dates all the way back to slavery. And he's a big advocate for equality in our community. Our second board member here is Gabriel S. He's our secretary. He's also a teacher at the high school here in Alexandria and kind of affords us the opportunity to keep track of our kids' grades, attendance, and things like that. Al Martzloff is our treasurer. He is owner of a coffee farm in Columbia and also an entrepreneur here in Fairfax. Alex Aguilar is a friend of mine, and he is the owner of Gen Contracting, a Class A contracting company throughout the Northern Virginia area. And then myself, owner and managing member of Even Scale LLC. Melissa Riddy is the director of Eastern Region Government and Community Relations at iNova, incredibly great woman. And lastly, we have Kenny Tran, who's the owner of My Inky Wear, who prints a lot of apparel and memorabilia for companies here in the area. We can go to the next slide. So our strategic plan. I'll go number 1, governance. Adopt sound ethical governance and financial management policies, which we are huge on. We want to make sure that what we're doing is different in that the money that we have and the money that we spend are responsibly managed and spent, because in contrast to other organizations that I've had the pleasure and sometimes displeasure, if I'm speaking candidly, of engaging with, is they don't spend their money right, which is why the opportunities don't go to the community. Because by the time any program hits these communities, if there's one at all, it's a skeleton, if that. Our program, create and implement consistent high impact programs. And the high impact is what we talked about when we talk about tracking individuals' progress for 5 to 10 years, because we want to make sure the impact that we're having is the highest it possibly can be by surrounding these individuals with support systems on all sides. Staffing, recruit, onboard, and manage high quality, dedicated members, volunteers, and staff. I think everybody on this call knows how important it is to have a team of people around you who are willing to actually do the work, which is crucial to our mission. Fund development, actively pursue funding grants, corporate gifts, and individual donations. As we transition to actually understanding what a nonprofit is and switching our program development over to an actual nonprofit, and we went from essentially me self-funding everything to actually doing this in a way where we can scale, we understand how important it is to get supports from every area we can. Operations and administration. Build organization quickly while maintaining quality, transparency, and values. We certainly have built quickly with the foundation that we've set up over the past 3 years, and we're starting to rival organizations in a positive way that have been around for decades or more. We can go to the next slide. So this is our pre-apprenticeship program slide. Training in the skilled trades for at-risk youth, 12 to 17. Apprentices meet two Saturdays a month as of now. Our goal is to ultimately turn it into an after-school program. Mentorship and education in key life skills such as conflict resolution, critical thinking, self-awareness, and accountability. We're big advocates of empowering our youth and helping them overcome what I like to call the victim mindset, which a lot of people fall into who grow up in low-income housing because, you're so used to being victimized by the system that you develop this mentality that you're powerless over your own future. Offers a viable career path to earn a livable wage and pursue economic self-sufficiency. We talked about, or I spoke briefly about the goal to take them off the mentality that public assistance is the only way to life, and that we want to ensure that these individuals are empowered and able to live in their localities while actually having a career, not just a job. We work closely with court services and families to assist youth in successfully transitioning from juvenile detention and probation. I mentioned the success story and other topics of interest on that sentence in regards to how we feel about things like that, because we want these young people who have fallen victim, in the true sense of falling victim to these systems, to have a fair shot. That is, one of our primary focuses. We can go to the next slide. So we have 14 active pre-apprentices with 30 on the wait list, and we actually capped the wait list off at 30 because, even those 30 have been on the wait list for a little while now. We're trying to bring them in, and it's very depressing to have to answer the phone and tell moms that I'll put your son on the wait list, but I don't know when he can get on, when he'll actually be in the program. So we decided to cap it off until we could let some people in off the wait list, so we can start calling back those parents and giving them the good news. The 95% program retention rate. So as of 3 years ago, the 95% retention rate is what we stand at in regards to kids who have been involved in our program and keep coming back and actively participate. We plan to track the improvement of truancy, GPA, family relationships, and mental health using interviews, conversations, and surveys in conjunction with ACPS and social services. So we have our own means of doing that, but we also partner with agencies and organizations within the city that can help us with other strategic data points that we don't readily have at our fingertips. We intend to place significant importance on producing quantitative and qualitative measures to improve our success and increase valuable life skills in both career and personal development. All very true, and it goes to our and how we measure our success. We can go to the next slide. So in the news, this is pretty cool on our website. So one of the things that we've done recently, separate from our program, is pilot an opportunity for the Juvenile Detention Center here in our city, and it's in the Gang Prevention Community Task Force, in which I sit on, in where we structured an agreement between the Juvenile Detention Center to do cosmetic renovations, if you will, more or less painting in their facility at a very reasonable cost, so long as they agree to let the individuals old enough to work and being incarcerated there shadow us and agree to pay those individuals $15 an hour while they're incarcerated so they have some money to come home with. The Alexandria Times May 30th article, We've Impacted Generations. In that article, we talk about the community cookouts that I sponsored in regards to having our kids pass out food next to the police department, which is huge. We have some articles here from the high school, which most of our kids actually go to. Pretty great article there. Underneath that, the Chamber of Commerce actually nominated me this year. I was nominated and elected to be one of my city's 40 under 40 honorees for all the innovative work we're doing here. And if you notice, lastly, there's an article recently in the Fairfax Times about how a young Latino male who grew up in an area called Chitilago in our city, which is rampant with gang recruitment and drug use. We gave him an apprenticeship through my company and kept him out of trouble, and now he's living a pretty successful life, which I think is awesome. We can go to the next slide. And this is a testimonial from a board member, Gabriel Lewis, who's actually the school teacher on our board of directors, talking about giving a monthly donation and his personal experience as a teacher and what he sees at school in regards to the challenges the kids face and why it's so important for him to be involved in our organization in the way he is. Here's some additional testimonials.
Don't work too hard.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Matt. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Roberto.
No, it's perfectly fine. Am I still here?
Yeah, we can
Hello?
hear you.
Okay. So if everybody knows, there's some testimonials. The last one is for myself about the young man I mentioned when I went off on that tangent. I'm sorry, I get so excited about talking about the work we do, and I have such a passion for it that I almost forgot we had a PowerPoint. But the first one also is very important. It's from Alexandria City Probation Officer. As I mentioned, we work with court services. And if you noticed, his testimonial says, I will request that the courts that all kids on my caseload can go through Roberto's program. This particular probation officer, with whom I have a great relationship now, has been there in person to see us, even sometimes in the face of his recommendations for a kid to be incarcerated, advocate for our youth who we're teaching to keep them out of that system, because we know that that's just not for them, and we know that what we're doing is working. The last one is from one of our program participants. I'm happy to actually mention him by name, first only, Trey, who's no longer 15. Now he's going on 17 pretty soon. No, I'm sorry, 16. And he actually we helped him open his own business. He now is a registered owner of an LLC called Wealthy Walls LLC. And he has utilized the fact that we have taught him painting skills and developed the mind of being an entrepreneur, and now is generating his own business through the skills he's learned in our program. We can go to the next slide. And here's some pretty results in the community. The cool thing about what we're doing too is like these kids they're developing into completely different kids. I mean, we're talking about kids that are, engaging with city leaders, community leaders, canvassing, hopefuls, going to college fairs, rubbing shoulders with, elected officials on a state and federal level at galas and fundraisers. And, it's just amazing to watch. And these pictures are a reflection of what our work looks like in the community. And ways to give, 3 ways to give in the event that anybody is interested in what that looks like. as it states here, contributions will directly impact our mission and program by funding pre-apprentice wages and assistance, trainer wages, job materials, tools and supplies, meals and transportation, and general operation expenses. The first way is at our website, www.cornerstonecraftsman.org. Another way, if you have any interest in volunteering in what this program looks like, and David could tell you how cool it's been. We were so lucky to have him come out and witness it in person and engage with our youth. Is contact our volunteer coordinator, Derry at cornerstonecraftsman.org, or give in kind. We have a list of in-kind donations we can always use, such as 2x4s, drywall, plaster, joint tape, 5-gallon, 1 gallons of paint, whatever we can use, to just really help these kids implement the skills that we're teaching them. And is there another slide, Andrew? No, I think there's not. So listen, everybody on this call, thank you for taking your time to hear what it is we're doing in the community. This is my life's work. I'm driven by passion is a good way to state what I feel, with a mixture of anger as well, because I grew up as one of these kids. There was nothing like this for me when I was growing up. I didn't have somebody to save me or try to teach me or try to help me learn, and I think every kid's a good kid. And I think that if you teach somebody something, that it could change their life. And I think that, anything is possible at any time, and anybody's capable of anything at any time if they put their hearts and minds to it. So thank you. And I think now is the appropriate time to open the floor for questions and comments.
Yeah, I got a question. So my first question is, can you talk more about like how the impact that you're having, honestly, how somebody who's not from the outside could kind of have that same impact in reaching out to those kids? Because I think your example is a very, very, very positive example of a case study that can be applied elsewhere, elsewhere in the country, elsewhere in the world. How is your approach? Like, how would you recommend other people who want to have this kind of impact approach something like this? Because it's a beast. If it was easily doable, everyone would do it.
That's right. That first off, that's an extremely great question, and I actually get asked that quite a bit, especially in regards to like replicating what we're trying to do or anything like that. But on an individual level, it's difficult to connect with these communities because the mentality of these communities is being let down by every system around them. And sometimes your family members is too, right? We're talking about inconsistent parents. We're talking about, family members that prey on you or steal from you or put their own needs first, and you're just a child. So really, when you think about the approach, you'd have to before you could even have a conversation with a meaningful conversation with a young person or even adult in these kind of communities, to where you can assist in attempting to change the trajectory of their lives, is you'd really have to identify a credible messenger within that community, and leverage the connections of that person's reputation to afford yourself the opportunity to get in front of people while having that person vouch for you. Because for instance, like the police chief, we just had a gun violence listening session where our program participants, I invited a lot of influential people to a room with our kids. It was a wonderful event. We had NDA signs signed to protect the kids and things like that. But I say that because when you find a credible messenger, like with the police chief who came to that event, who otherwise these kids are not happy to engage with and have no interest in communicating with at all, when I introduce the chief of police as my friend Raul, as opposed to the chief of police of Alexandria, the walls are slightly down a little bit. They offer you enough of an opportunity to at least begin a conversation. And then through consistency and persistence, you keep bringing the same people around little by little by little, all while making sure that it's a positive way, and that whatever you tell these individuals about timing, about compensation, about whatever, that you keep your word on that. Because if you don't build up that trust to where they can trust your word, they're not going to trust that person's your friend, because they're not even going to trust you for who you are. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
And it's possible. It's possible for all of us to do it. It's possible for any of us to give back. You know, but truly we need to be focused on, you know, meeting people where they're at. And I know a lot of people like to say that, and it's a great mentality to have if you truly understand what it means, but you don't necessarily have to relate to the trauma per se to meet someone where they're at, but you do have to approach it with the mind of understanding and empathy and compassion for what an individual may have gone through that got them to where they're at in life, you know, regardless of how they perceive life to be. So there is that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I've had headphones on. So listen, Roberta, I can't tell you how amazing what you have been doing here. It's just incredible. And just to your point of, you know, children coming to you at the age of 12 and having already had some terrible experiences in their lives, do you think at some point you might, let's say, just even find a partner that that could you know, start, I don't know, start at 7 or 6, so these children don't have to go. I mean,
Well, yeah. No,
they're still
I
going
get
through like 0 to 6, right? Of all the
right,
horribleness in their lives. But like,
right.
wouldn't it be great if you could chop that back even more?
Yeah, and you know, I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out is how do we surround these kids as young as possible? And I think if I'm being honest here, one of the biggest challenges with getting them younger than that and mentoring them younger than that and trying to change their lives younger than that is with a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old, you know, we're talking young people who can kind of, you know, for the most part, think for themselves and you know, entertain ideas for what they could be as opposed to perceiving, you know, what's going on in their household to be normal. Like they have the capability to understand that it's not normal and they want it to be different. With people younger than that, I would love to be able to reach those, but there's many challenges, including the fact that at that age, whether mom's irresponsible or dad's in and out of jail or mom's addicted to drugs or not, there's more of a sense of mom or dad or grandma, whoever's the legal guardian, having to quote unquote protect that kid, because if you come in too early and see what's going on and CPS gets called, which is a huge fear in these communities, which is why they keep people out. And 9 times out of 10, well, maybe not 9 times out of 10, but a high percentage of the time, I would assume that CPS being called is probably appropriate. You know, when you talk about reaching the younger, you know, people, younger people than we mentioned in these communities, the challenges are far greater. By the age of 12, what we're finding is that, you know, whether mom is just working 2 jobs and actually being a good mom and not there for her kid and just really can't afford to live the way that she'd like to live for her family, or whether mom's addicted to fentanyl or crack, you know, by the time a young person's age of 12 or so in these communities, the parents are allowing them to live a little more independently. Does that make sense?
Of course, yes. And that makes sense. And, you know, I was then thinking like, well, maybe this is just a chalk snap line where you've started this now, and then more 12-year-olds will come in as people graduate out of this out of this program, and they can start to look at their younger siblings and say, this isn't right.
Correct. Correct. And this is also the thing. So one of the great things that we've done here when we built these relationships with the families is that they welcome me in their homes. Like I go in homes, I see roaches, I see rats, I see entire families' clothing packed up in plastic totes because they don't want rat droppings or roaches to be in their clothes. They're not living out of dresser and drawers like we're not, right? I see that they don't have any food in their cupboards, in their refrigerators. So in theory, where we're going with this, and I hope to someday accomplish it, is leverage the fact that we built these trusted relationships to have word spread like it already has, be it with the kids we're already working with and their younger siblings, or moms of friends of the moms that we're working of the kids with younger kids asking us, how can you help my children, in a very gentle way where it's not embarrassing for them to ask for help, right? To be honest, to let us know that they might not have, they might not have food or diapers or whatever it is anybody else takes for granted, where when you're 5 years old and 6 years old and should just be able to be a kid, where you don't get to experience that. And the huge thing that what we've done here is build trust and a reputation and credibility for ourselves in these communities, which, I certainly hope at some point we'll be able to engage a younger population. But again, this stuff, even to get to where we're at, has taken 3 consistent years of dedicated work. I believe in what I'm doing so much. I sacrifice my personal relationships behind this. I sacrifice my personal life behind this. This is my primary focus. This is, when I say it's my life's work, my life's work. And, I guess just to touch on your curiosity about it, I mean, certainly we hope to do that, but we also know it's going to take time to do it in a meaningful way, because part of what I do is I ensure that as we're building what we're building, we safeguard it from people who intend to exploit these communities or exploit our kids in an attempt to gain funding or get grants, because it's more rampant than you would think. It's actually really disheartening.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Well, yes, you are absolutely passionate about this, and I think everybody on this call here would agree with me. Huge kudos to you, really.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, Roberto. I definitely echo what everyone else
Hello.
said. You, everything you're doing is truly inspiring and incredible. As far as your volunteering opportunities, I guess I was curious, how does that work? And if a lot of members of WBC were interested, would there be any group opportunities, or is it individual? I guess I'm curious how we can best help.
We have a number of opportunities. The best way to find out the specific needs of the volunteer opportunities right now would be Derry Derringer. So Derry at cornerstonecraftsman.com. He's a volunteer, but more importantly, he's my friend and mentor who's been in the nonprofit space. We had the opportunity to connect about 1.5 years ago, and he's our operations guy as of right now. So be it a group opportunity or individual opportunity, he'll be able to give you the full list of needs and ways to contribute. And we certainly would appreciate anyone's time for any reason. Hello, am I still here?
Yep. I hear
Sorry,
you.
my screen cut off, so I wasn't sure. I was like, oh.
No, we're not going to do you dirty and throw you out like that. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask. Also, make sure you jot down some of this contact information. I'm sure even if you don't, particularly have an idea right now, I'm sure you're going to be walking around talking to someone. Someone's going to mention something and you say, oh, you know what? This will be perfect. So, hey, at the very, very least, jot down this contact information, put it in your pocket. You never know when this is going to come up and be helpful. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else we want to go after? Or Roberto, Josh, Steve, feel free.
I'll just say thanks again for everybody to taking the time to hear about the work we do. And as Shaheen said, you never know how you can help or who may be able to help. And to anyone interested in helping, sometimes just having the information to share is enough of a help in itself.
Hey, Roberto, it's Steve at WBC. What's the status of your 501c3 designation? Is that
so we
process?
so Well, the IRS is actually reviewing our application right now. We just got approved for our Virginia solicitation application. We anticipate it being approved in September. The last time we had our people checking with the IRS, they were behind schedule. No surprise there, it's the IRS. But as of right now, they are actively reviewing our application, are in contact. So we're hoping by September.
There's a Hannah Clark had asked what your friend's email address is that you referred to a few minutes ago regarding volunteer opportunities. If you could repeat that.
Yeah, it's Derry, DERRY at Cornerstone Craftsman.org. And also, you can go to our website and be put in contact with him as well, or see our list of needs in regards to volunteer opportunities as well. And that's going to be cornerstonecraftsman.org.
Well, I think I'll go ahead and close this out. So on behalf of WBC and our DEI task force and Shaheen, who helped us get the program started today, thank you everyone, and Roberto in particular. Outstanding presentation, and we look forward to exploring ways that between the Washington Building Congress and your organization, we can work together and do some great things in the community. So thank you to everybody. We did record this, so we do plan to put the PowerPoint presentation and the recording of the webinar on our website. So check that out maybe tomorrow or early next week. So
sure. And the website, would that be WBC.com?
WBCnet altogether.org, O-R-G.
Oh, gotcha.
Yep. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone, and appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.